This is SSN
Story Studio Network.
Hi, I'm Dean Gation, and this is the Powerful Connections Podcast. Welcome to Season 2. For many years, my efforts as a service provider were focused on developing, planning, and building high-voltage projects. Whether it is transmission lines, substations, distribution systems, or connecting generation, projects with my involvement have been successful. My company, DGG5 Advising, is the opportunity maker you need for your energy and construction projects. This season, my guests and I will focus on specific topics of interest and bring them to light in interesting discussions. On this episode of Powerful Connections, we will discuss Indigenous relationships with a focus on the partnership. With me on the show today are two industry leaders that I admire, Christine Goulais, CEO, NBISIING Power, Rob McNeil, President, Composite Power. Rob, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Dean. Thanks for having me back on the podcast. So I'm Rob McNeil. I'm the president with Composite Power Group. I've been with the company since 2013. I'm an electrical engineer by education. I spent some time with a utility with Hydro Ottawa for a few years. I've worked with a manufacturer, which was actually where we met back in the day when I worked with RS Technologies. And I also spent some time working with the former team at Grafton Utility Supply, which became HD Supply before I was at Composite Power. Today, my responsibilities are heavily around growing the Composite Power Group companies. We've got businesses right across Canada today that represent manufacturers selling electrical equipment in the Canadian market.
Thanks, Rob. Tell us a little bit about Composite Power.
Composite Power, we're a partner-owned company. We've evolved over the years from being a more closely held family business to a group of professionals, predominantly with technical backgrounds or heavy experience in the electrical utility industry. And we support manufacturers to promote their products and services to the Canadian utility market. So we use our technical expertise, our knowledge of customers, our knowledge of applications to help work with our customers on a very consultative basis to bring new and existing technologies into the utility marketplace.
Fabulous. Thanks very much. And Christine, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, Dean. Thanks for having me. So my name's Christine Goulais. I am a member of NBISIING First Nation, which is located just outside of North Bay, Ontario, about 3.5 hours north of Toronto. I am the Chief Executive Officer for NBISIING Power and have been with NBISIING Power since it opened its doors in May of 2022. I spent the majority of my career in Toronto working with Hydro One for 10 years. And before that, did some work with the provincial government focused on Indigenous policing and corrections. And my background is social work. I have a master's in social work and still spend some time in that field, mainly on a volunteer basis.
Christine, I appreciate you making time for us. Tell us a little bit about the organization you're leading at NBISIING Power.
NBISIING Power is a business partnership focused on Indigenous procurement opportunities, particularly in the energy industry. We are majority owned by NBISIING First Nation with our partner Composite Power Group. We opened up our doors in May of 2022, and our vision is to be a leader in supplying engineered electrical equipment in the utility and mining sector. And while doing that, supporting our customers' strategic objectives related to Indigenous procurement and capacity building here in Ontario and across Canada. We provide an Indigenous owned and led opportunity for customers and manufacturers to do business with. We are located in NBISIING First Nation in their Beneshi Small Business Park. We are currently 100% Indigenous employed with 4 full-time employees.
Today, we want to focus on the creation and the operation of an Indigenous partnership with you both. Christine, you have a shareholder in the board of NBISIING First Nation and another shareholder in Composite Power. But as the CEO of the Indigenous business, what led to getting together with Composite Power?
So I first should recognize Richard Boy, who's the former president of Composite Power. It was really Richard's vision to look at creating a partnership in terms of supporting nation building and economic reconciliation, while at the same time continuing to diversify and grow Composite Power in their ability to serve their customers. So there's really three key areas that came together to create this partnership, and mainly focused on alignment of values and strategic priorities. So Nipissing First Nation, our majority owner at the time, and continue to have a strategic priority that's very focused on economic diversification and capacity building in the community. So bringing experience and creating and implementing successful partnerships is something the nation is very familiar with. They have a number of partnerships and joint ventures here in the nation. Nipissing is seen as a leader in Canada when it comes to self-governance, law and policy making, and land management. And they're ready to do business. So Nipissing First Nations strategic priority about looking at ways to diversify economic development in the community was certainly aligned with bringing this partnership together. As I mentioned earlier, Richard Boy at the time, and now Rob McNeil with Composite Power, also had a strategic priority looking at ways to support their existing and future customers on a common endeavor to look at supporting Indigenous economic reconciliation, and by doing that through meaningful partnership development and capacity building. So Composite Power was looking for an opportunity to work with an Indigenous community on developing a partnership that would support their strategic objectives as well as their customers. And then, of course, the customer, we've all heard, a variety of commitments and announcements, particularly in this industry related to Indigenous participation in project development. NBISIING Power offers a significant opportunity and solution to customers like Hydro One and Ontario Power Generation to support the successful implementation of and achievement of their objectives as it relates to Indigenous procurement opportunities here in Ontario.
Congratulations on the alignment of the two groups. There's been a significant change in the last, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years for sure, in board governance and ESG policies, and then the push for Indigenous engagement. And some of the large companies, some you mentioned in the industry, have procurement policies for Indigenous content and spending. But at the end of the day, this is about building capacity, developing resources, and ultimately being the best choice for your customers to procure their materials or equipment through NBISIING Power. So, it's the right decision for the right product at a competitive price. And at the end of the day, this is a viable for-profit commercial business. So we'll get into the long-term goals and objectives in a moment, but this is a partnership. This is Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations finding common ground and opportunity. And it is just fantastic to watch. So, Rob, what was the driving force to create this partnership with NBISIING Power?
A lot of the driving force came back to listening to our customers and what they were looking for the future. So going back several years, we were at the beginning of the real push for electrification and development. And here in the province of Ontario, and for especially our customer Hydro One, that meant the construction of lots of transmission lines and substations, which is a market the Composite Power Group is actively involved in. We felt that starting to investigate a partnership like this might be a way for us to look at repositioning the products and services that we offer for the development that was going to take place in the future. So we saw a viable business opportunity, and collaborating with our customers right up through the organization. What we also heard from them was that they had a challenge to face, that they were also looking for opportunities to engage with Indigenous communities. And there was a real challenge in being able to procure meaningful content in order to develop these projects. So there's lots of will, but the products and services need to be there as well. That's what kind of got things going. And then, once we started to meet with our partners, we started off with Richard and Christine, expanded to the leadership at Nipissing First Nation. We saw that there was a potential set of partners that we could work with to develop and explore this opportunity further.
It's fabulous. Christine, please review in a few words what the partnership between NBISIING Power and Composite Power is.
NBISIING Power is a mutually beneficial relationship built on a foundation of open communication, shared learning, trust, respect, and accountability. The mutually beneficial relationship part is really important, not only from a revenue generation perspective, but also from a shared learning and shared experiences perspective. I think what I've learned the most in the last almost 3 years of having the privilege to lead this business is the shared mutual learning that happens on a daily basis between the Composite Power team, the NBISIING Power team, and Nipissing First Nation. I think that's what makes us unique, is that we are learning and sharing together on a regular basis.
Your statement that needs to be on the wall behind your desk. It should be posted for everyone to see. Christine, this is such great importance to you and your community. Why is it so important to your group and your community?
Well, I think for Nipissing First Nation, it really provides an opportunity for the nation to become meaningfully involved and participate meaningfully in the significant growth of the energy development that's happening here in Ontario, while at the same time supporting the nation's strategic objectives related to diversification of economic development and growth, and building capacity here in the nation amongst nation members. So this opportunity is important to the community because it provides employment opportunities, capacity building opportunities for nation members who are already living in the community and looking for an opportunity in this industry, or who are looking to come home after receiving an education or having some experience somewhere else in the world. It gives them an opportunity to come home and find a meaningful job that they would be interested in pursuing. For me personally, I think the fact that the work we do here at NBISIING Power, it will directly contribute to the delivery of community benefits and to build a stable stream of revenue for the community that supports the nation's vision and mission. So it's really about the broader community benefit, which is how the nation looks at all of their economic development opportunities, which is how does this benefit the broader community?
Yeah.
For me personally, I always reflect on something my dad, who's one of my mentors, who also served as the chief of Nipissing First Nation for many years in the 80s and 90s. He always told me that no matter what I decided to do with my career, to make sure I was doing something that was meaningful and that I could look back on and be proud of. And I do believe that NBISIING Power is something that I know I will reflect positively on someday and look back on with my children and hopefully their children, and say that I'm proud to have played a part in NBISIING Power.
You should be proud. I know you are leaving your mark. You can see it and hear it. And I guarantee JP's very proud too. NBISIING Power is growing its presence steadily in the marketplace. It is nice to see it in action. The EDIS conference recently in Markham was a good indicator for me and as an observer and participant. Rob, what was the trigger of aligning things that solidified your decision that this partnership needs to happen?
Once we had our first couple of introductory meetings, we started to get to know our partners. So we saw very quickly that Nipissing First Nation had previous precedents working in partnerships in similar situations. So we saw other partnerships. We also met with the team and saw that the community had very strong governance, leadership that was very interested in pursuing these types of opportunities. Working with Brendan and Dwayne, who are our co-board members on the Nipissing First Nation side, to help qualify the opportunity. Very quickly, we were able to establish rapport and see that the companies were aligned on the desire to look at growing a business opportunity. We had aligning objectives where Composite Power was looking to grow our market and ensure that we could be a viable business to support the manufacturers that we work with. And then our partner was looking for capacity building opportunities. Combine that with the previous comments that Christine and I have shared about the potential market opportunity and growth. We saw the opportunity for a business here. As those things came together, that's what made the difference, the development of that trust. And then at some point, you do have to take a leap. We then, signed the paperwork, incorporated, started a business. Christine became our leader. the CEO to help us run the business. We've slowly been taking things step by step from there to bring on additional employment opportunities, contract with additional suppliers, connect with customers to help grow the business. So we're very fortunate that we've kind of followed that path, and it's all kind of underpinned in those shared principles.
Well, this is tough. This is, a constant effort to be in business. Never mind operate in a partnership. I've been involved in many partnerships over the years on various projects, but they have a start and finish. Their objectives are to deliver a service or build an asset. This is an ongoing daily commercial operation. This is a little different. So, Rob, what is the general structure of NBISIING Power and Composite Power doing business together in the supply chain sector?
So that's changed and evolved over time, Dean. So first of all, our teams are in regular communication around various opportunities. We are coordinating together, but it started off like one of the things that is very difficult for a business to break into this industry is creating relationships with suppliers. Mm-hmm. So primarily the biggest value that Composite Power brought to the partnership was the ability to accelerate some of those relationships for NBISIING Power. And that's really where I see my role as a board member today, is to help to continue to cultivate those relationships, help consult with Christine on developing new relationships with suppliers, because you need things to sell. And whether you're an Indigenous company or a non-Indigenous company, to break into this industry, partner up with manufacturers that are viable in the Canadian market, it's not an easy thing to do. We worked extremely closely because there was also knowledge to download about how the business operated, market intelligence, customer relationships to share. But as we've grown, the NBISIING team has become far more independent. They're driving a lot of value for Composite Power and for our suppliers and for our customers by managing the customer relationships, looking forward at potential future sales opportunities, engaging customers about new market development. This is that capacity building part. So it's evolved over time. And now I think what we're working on is what does the next phase of that business look like? How do we continue to develop? And again, we're still working closely together, but we're really trying to develop as two independent organizations to service the marketplace. But obviously there's a business relationship in the background.
One of the great experiences I had was the partnership I was involved in, was creating and working on the inside with two very large organizations, and the impact of joining expertise and people was amazing. The part you don't expect is the relationships you build and the strength you realize when those forces are aligned and rowing in the same direction. And every once in a while you get a wow moment, and you're going to get those more and more as this maturity of this relationship and these businesses come. So, Christine, I'm going to ask you what the advantages and challenges of the business is from your first 3 years.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's a number of advantages that we're certainly, experiencing and seeing how it develops the business. And of course, just like any other new business, we have some challenges. Particularly on the advantages side, having two strong partners is a significant advantage for us. So two strong partners that bring experience and expertise that complement each other creates that space for mutual learning and growth. So Rob mentioned, one of the valuable pieces that Composite Power brings to the partnership is the vendor relationships piece, which would have taken a new business a very long time to develop, but having those existing relationships through Composite Power allowed us to hit the ground running a little bit more quickly.
Absolutely.
On the other side, right, from the nation side and the nation's partnership, we bring those relationships and the connection to the community and having that level of support and guidance, which I think makes us a little unique, how connected we are to the community. We live in the community. We work in the community. We rent office space from the community. We have regular visits with chief and council and share how the business is going. People can come and stop in at our office anytime and ask us questions. We are a nation-owned business, which means we're accountable to the members. So we encourage people to come visit, ask what we do, and show some interest and be able to share what the business has been up to. I think the other advantage is customers are genuinely looking for opportunities to work with businesses like ours. So it makes it a little easier to have some open dialogue and conversation and share our story as a way to look at supporting their objectives as a nation-owned business. In terms of challenges, I think in the first 3 years of business, sustainable growth can be a challenge. Figuring out where we want to focus our efforts, what yields the best result. You don't have, 20 or 30 employees right off the bat, so you have to be very focused on where everybody spends their time and what's going to support, the day-to-day operations of the business, while at the same time looking to the future and the future growth. And then I think the typical challenges that come with starting a new business, even though we've got 2 strong partners, we still have to deal with, making sure our financial systems are in place, that we have to develop new policies and procedures. Rob mentioned that the idea is for NBISIING Power and Composite Power to support one another, but to also be able to act independently as independent businesses. In order to do that, we have to make sure we have policies and procedures in place to guide the business, to support the people that work there. And I think just lastly, this is a massive industry with a large number of businesses and organizations to work with. So again, one of the challenges is where do you focus your efforts so that you can support the day-to-day operations of the business while at the same time looking to the future?
Yeah, the focus of do you use shared services or do you stand alone? And there's going to be points in time where you do both. We had a construction business and a manufacturing business, but we had overall items of many, many things in administration that made us very cost effective and efficient. But as we grew the business, some of those departments became self-sustaining and alone inside the individual businesses, but you still had the oversight of both of them going on from the ownership. So I believe you are on a great path to continued success and growth, and wish you well with it. So for both of you, how do you handle the items of business planning, implementation of those plans, and then your objectives and goals for your operation? Rob, we'll start with you.
We're right in the thick of that right now. Our second full fiscal year just finished up January 31st. First, I'll give Christine a ton of credit for doing all of she's really doing all of that heavy lifting as the CEO to coordinate with her team, with the various board members, with the bank, doing all the little things you need to do to drive a startup, as well as pulling the parties together to create the conversation about, where this business is going and what we want to accomplish, this year, next year, and into the future. The challenge is always in picking the path, getting down and doing the things that we need to do. We're lucky that so far we've been able to hire a great team at NBISIING Power to work with Chris on the various initiatives, help to drive sales, collect information, support our customers through the order management process. We've been able to surround ourselves with a great group of people to help do that. The challenges of planning don't go away. It's still a lot of hard work. It's still a startup, and there's lots of work to do as we go forward.
Christine, your turn.
Well, thanks for those kind words, Rob. We are certainly in the thick of it with our year end coming up and planning for 2025. I think just to add to what Rob had shared, I think strategic planning is really important, and we do that at a team level. I also get to participate in Rob's strategic planning with his business, and likewise include him in ours, so that we make sure there's alignment in the areas where we need to have alignment, and that we can continue to support each other. Establishing those goals and targets, and regularly checking in. So where are we making progress? What requires more focus? It's ongoing, and it's done with the team as well as with the board, right? So making sure everybody understands where we're at in achieving our strategic objectives and where we might need some support or guidance or some additional attention. So that's really important for us. Always thinking about what's in front of us immediately and how we how we continue to work to implement projects and commitments we've made. And then also thinking about what the future holds for the next year and sometimes even 2 years down the road, given the industry we work in and project timelines can be longer. We're always looking at what's not only coming in front of us this year, but also into the next year.
You know, one of the things that people learn in the value of a strategic plan is it's not just done, put in a binder to become credenza-ware and collect dust on it. It's a living, breathing thing. And the constant gathering of data to analyze the metrics and see what tweaks you need to do annually, that's the continuous improvement part that you do in managing the business. And it's an ongoing thing. It's a living, breathing activity. So Rob, as the non-Indigenous partner, what are the key items of greatest importance to the partnership business?
We're doing as much work as we possibly can to stay aligned in the partnership and make sure that, as Christine mentioned, that communication is open and that the goals and objectives that we have are aligned at the partnership level. We also have to get that word out to the supplier base as well. So again, sometimes those are suppliers that are affiliated with Composite Power. And as NBISIING Power has grown and the business has evolved, Christine and her team have been able to cultivate their own supplier relationships outside of the partnership. So, it's making sure that we're communicating, staying aligned on all of those types of things, allowing NBISIING the opportunity to grow. So it's watching all of those aspects. And then also, there's the customer engagement piece as well. And then the communication between the teams. So, we're watching all of those things. And then at the end, the other thing too is we're also operating a business here. So, we're working with Christine and our other board members at NFN to make sure that our financial projections, our forecasts for hiring, align with our business needs. And, the company can continue to be a going concern and grow with the work that we're able to bring into NBISIING Power.
So Christine, at a very high level, what is the structure of the new partnership organization?
Well, from a governance perspective, we are governed by a board of directors. So Rob is one of our board of directors. So we have 2 members of Composite Power and 2 from Nipissing First Nation. So Dwayne Nashqua, who's the strategic advisor to Chief and Council here in Nipissing, and Brendan Houston, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Nipissing First Nation, are our Nipissing representatives. And with Composite, we have, as I mentioned, Rob and Richard Boy. So I report to a board of directors. And as Rob mentioned, they're heavily involved in all aspects of the business in terms of planning and making sure I have the appropriate level of authority that I need to move the business forward. From an organizational and operational perspective, as I mentioned earlier, the NBISIING Power team and the Composite Power team do work together in many cases on a daily basis. Day-to-day sales, vendor relationship development, reviewing opportunities, figuring out if it's a good fit, continuing to advocate and promote with customers about who NBISIING Power is and how we actually work together. So we do have a reporting structure that with the board of directors that provides the guidance and direction that we need to continue to grow the business and make sure that we are aligning on those objectives that we've set out, while at the same time, at that more operational level, the NBISIING Power team and Composite Power team are working together. We are supporting one another. And as I mentioned a couple of times, learning from one another. And I do think that both those systems work very well collaboratively. And I think a big part of that is the level of commitment that we have at the board level and the staff level to make sure that we are achieving what we set out to achieve and that NBISIING Power is growing at that sustainable rate that we want it to grow at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And without structure and order, you're just thriving in chaos. And that's, not what any business wants. And it's so nice to see that structure. So expand on that business structure a little bit and just give me a little bit on the normal items that you got to deal with, all the tax, insurance, banking, all those other issues, just high level day-to-day stuff, how you take that structure and direction and manage all those things.
We do have to make sure we are following all of the required regulations and rules that any other business follows. As an Indigenous business, we are still required to report to the CRA and pay taxes on profit that the business generates. Mm-hmm. What we do have to make sure that we're establishing a strong credit history, right? So we work with vendors and customers who expect that we have either have or look to establish a strong credit history, which, as I'm sure any startup business will agree, that's not an easy thing to do in your first couple of years of business. If you don't have a financial history, you have to look at other ways to build that confidence with your vendors and your customers. Yeah. One of the other sort of challenges and day-to-day operational matters we need to always be focused on is, given that a number of our vendors are from all over the world and they utilize material in their manufacturing and production, we have to look at foreign exchange and tariffs and how we manage the volatility and potential risk that can create for us. We're also looking at when we look to become successful on projects. Sometimes those projects do not get implemented for 1, 2, 3 years. So we have to think about what the long-term goals are as well as the short-term goals. We have all of the same business startup issues that we need to make sure we're dealing with and that we need to make sure we're addressing on a very regular basis. Sometimes that requires some external support, whether it's on the financial side, making sure your books are in order, making sure you're getting the right advice from your bank. And again, continuing to engage your partners and your board who do have experience in this area has helped us. But we certainly do face the same challenges that all other businesses face as it relates to getting the business off the ground with not a lot of financial history to back them.
Well, I think the maturity in your processes in your business are showing up right away, and I think it'll help strengthen you as you go. Rob, what do you feel success looks like for NBISIING Power from your vantage point?
I think success means that we're achieving the goals that we sort of set out to with all the various stakeholders. We want to make sure that we're growing the business and creating employment opportunities, and sort of meeting those economic development goals that our partner, NBISIING First Nation has. We want to create more market opportunity for the suppliers and others that are involved with the business. So, the goal wasn't to, keep the pie the same size and divide it up between the same number of companies. The goal was to grow the market opportunity and create more opportunity. So, combining those employment and economic development goals, which are key aspects of the implementation of reconciliation that our customers are looking for as well in terms of their engagement with Indigenous business, combined with what is like a great business opportunity for the partnership. Mm-hmm. I think we're looking at balancing those three things as we grow, so that those that are partnering with NBISIING Power, so not just Composite Power, but the manufacturers that choose to go to market through NBISIING Power, the customers that choose to buy, are all benefiting from this business structure.
That's a great answer, and I'll ask you the same question 5 years from now and see if it's different. I'd like to hear from both of you on this one, but what are the values and advantages to customers in the energy and construction industry of doing business with an Indigenous-owned business? So, Christine, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Dean, because I think the perspective that I want to share, I think is important for people to hear, because that's a question we get asked very often, right? What's different? What additional value does an Indigenous business bring? And I think one big part that I think is important to talk about is this diversity breeds innovation. So with all the growth plans that we're seeing here in Ontario, specifically, Indigenous businesses and communities, they do bring a diverse perspective. historical perspective, and ideas that will only lead to new and more efficient ways of doing things. Indigenous businesses and communities do lead with our values, which are typically built on foundations of trust, respect, and commitment. And we can be very resourceful when we're looking to develop a business, for example, or look at a new opportunity that could bring benefit to the community. Again, this is NBISIING Power specific, but I'm sure applies to many other Indigenous businesses, is the years of experience that are coming from, in our case, both partners, is a tremendous value add. Again, on the nation side, their foundational governance structure, policy making and law making, as well as business development. Then on the Composite Power side, the technical expertise, the vendor expertise really creates a unique partnership in the sense that NBISIING Power brings all of that with us in all of the work that we do. I think Indigenous businesses are very willing to collaborate and support other Indigenous businesses and communities. So we welcome competition. NBISIING Power has met with and engaged with several other Indigenous businesses, and we understand that this is a competitive environment, and we are actually very excited to see Indigenous businesses competing against Indigenous businesses and looking for ways to maximize those opportunities by working together. We know our communities best, and we know how to work with them in a respectful way, which I think brings a significant amount of value add to the work that we're doing. And the last thing I want to mention, which is really important to NBISIING Power, it's one of our strategic objectives and something we're going to be very focused on this year, is, we're in a very unique position to support what I like to call nation building, which is really about sharing in the benefit, and supporting capacity building across other nations. So finding ways to look at NBISIING Power's development, growth, and success, and figuring out how we share in the benefit that we're receiving, while at the same time supporting capacity building across other nations here in Ontario, and taking the opportunity to provide that in some cases guidance or opportunity outside of our geographical landscape.
I'll ask you the value and advantages for customers, Rob, from your vantage point.
Yeah, I think the value and advantage for customers gets right back to the very beginning consultations that Richard had when he started doing some market research and looking to engage a community, is that we've created the opportunity for our customers to buy electrical equipment as part of their projects directly from a First Nation-owned business. And then it's a business that, as they do their procurement from this business, it's growing, it's creating job opportunities, and it will be there in the future for them to continue to do business with. And NBISIING Power also has the ability, again, to create supplier relationships, bring new technologies into the business the same way to our customers, the same way Composite Power does. So I think that's the benefit that we've created for customers, and it'll continue to grow as NBISIING grows.
And this is something we've all talked about for some time. Creating majority-owned Indigenous partnerships is hard, but one of the focuses that people have missed is the supply chain. And some of the experiences I've been through, we've been able to create all sorts of different partnership opportunities and different services. But one of the big projects I was on, we were trying to get through it. We weren't successful in it, but it wasn't a wasted effort, and it helped me tremendously in advising many organizations in the work. And NBISIING Power is, and Christina said this already, is a very unique organization that was created on top of being Indigenous, was created in the height of COVID. It is celebrating 3 years of business operation, and the market is as busy as it's been in a couple of generations. So, Christine, how do you maximize this opportunity immediately that's in front of you, yet still make plans for the future?
Yeah, it's really hard to not grasp at everything because it's in front of you and you see the opportunity. But we do have to think strategically about what we can take on as a young, growing business and what we want to think about in the future. So, for us, we're always looking at where those immediate opportunities are, whether that's, submitting making submissions on RFPs that come out for projects by our customers or some of the contractors that work on behalf of our customers. Those may sometimes result in a positive outcome, whereas sometimes they don't. So, but it's a part of our daily function, is that we're always looking at what those opportunities are and how we can benefit from them. In terms of long-term development opportunities, one of the things we're working on, and actually have been working on since we opened our doors, is supplier development programs with our customers, which is looking at ways to bring diverse opportunities for our customers to diversify their supplier base, and going through the process and motions of getting those approvals completed, promoting the opportunity to work with NBISIING Power as an Indigenous supplier. And that contributes to the sort of long-term sustainable growth that NBISIING Power can count on. Meaning, if we establish a relationship with a customer where we are the primary or secondary supplier for a particular item, we have an idea of what we can count on year over year with that particular opportunity. So that allows us with some baseline, while at the same time allowing us to pursue larger opportunities that oftentimes are a little less predictable when it comes to making submissions for RFPs, for example.
Rob, what do you feel is some highlights of how you maximize this opportunity right now?
Yeah, I think maybe what I'd build a little bit on that point Christine made about some of the supplier development programs. Those are actually a very interesting opportunity because they create a ton of value for NBISIING to develop as a supplier, but they also create a really great opportunity for manufacturers and the customer to get together as well. It creates another mechanism to engage, larger companies that have a very detailed process. So again, this is a value that NBISIING can supply by, some of the manufacturer relationships we've been able to create. And Christine has been able to go work with these supplier development teams. We've been able to bring technologies into customers that I'm not going to say they would have been deaf to, but it would have taken a lot more work and effort to break in the door. So there's an interesting benefit to those supplier development programs on top of cultivating and helping grow companies like NBISIING Power. So there's a great benefit to those, and our customers are doing a really good job in terms of their growth and implementation of those strategies.
Those are great items. We're going to come to closing out the show. I wish to thank you both for being on Powerful Connections. Before we close this episode of Powerful Connections, I'd like to ask you both for some short closing remarks. Rob, can you provide us your thoughts on working in the supplier realm with NBISIING Power? Like
any startup, it's a lot of work. We're very lucky that we've got a great partner and a great team to work with. Same as any business, there'll be challenges as we grow. But there's a definite market opportunity for a company like NBISIING Power to grow into the electrical power industry and fill a much needed hole to work with large users, contractors, and others that are trying to build infrastructure in the future. And also fill that collaboration piece, Christine and her team working with other communities and sharing the benefits that we might be able to develop with through NBISIING Power.
Christine, please provide some thoughts for our listeners to ponder from your viewpoint.
Well, first of all, miigwech Dean for inviting NBISIING Power and me to participate. We appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more about us, and this is a great opportunity for us to get the word out. I do encourage people who listen to this podcast to really think about what action they are taking to support Indigenous business development and Indigenous economic growth in your line of work. Maybe it's not in the energy industry, maybe it's not in the sector we work in, but think about how are you supporting Indigenous business development and growth. Think a little outside the box a little and think big. One thing that I typically like to point out is thinking about it from a labor pool perspective. Statistics show that 42% or maybe even more of the Indigenous population here in Ontario, we're under the age of 25, which means there is a massive opportunity here for all of us to look at what does that capacity building and job readiness look like for Indigenous youth, and how can we be working with them to make sure that they are participating and contributing to all of this opportunity that's in front of us. And just if I can leave you with, Indigenous communities have been building economies for hundreds of years. And Indigenous communities are ready to do business in a very meaningful way. And I think there's an opportunity here for the industry to open up their minds and be willing to work together a little differently while at the same time meaningfully. We have to be willing to appreciate that Indigenous communities and their businesses are at different stages in their journey to economic prosperity. And we have to be able to have the openness and willingness to meet communities where they are and grow together.
Thank you very much. This has been a great discussion on the relationship of the partnership of a majority Indigenous-owned business, as well as the special connection you both have in making this work, and appreciate your insight and thought-provoking discussions. The electrical and utility industry is benefiting from your leadership and education, and as great leaders do, you are both modest in recognizing your impact, and you carry a big voice for all of us to hear. In this episode, Christine Goulais from NBISIING Power and Rob McNeil from Composite Power presented the importance and value of Indigenous relationships and partnerships. They discuss why their partnership works so well. They both have their histories and journeys to this point where they meet in their careers, and how their openness and constant communication in their success is their strength. Rainey, what were your takeaways from the discussion with Christine and Rob?
Well, I saw that the customers of Composite Power were looking for opportunities to engage Indigenous communities. Nipissing First Nation is an Indigenous community, and they're focused on economic diversification, capacity building, and creating and implementing successful partnerships. The open-minded approach from these two groups to find a mutually beneficial opportunity is what created a great partnership in NBISIING Power. Composite Power brought immediate energy industry relationships and customers, suppliers, and contractors to NBISIING Power. Nipissing First Nation brought immediate engagement to NBISIING Power from Nipissing First Nation and other Indigenous communities as well. So the combination was immediate success for NBISIING Power to the benefit of both of these partners. After NBISIING Power was underway, Rob and his staff at Composite Power had to let go a little bit for NBISIING to be its own company. Establishing their own relationships with customers allows NBISIING Power to have a baseline to count on year after year, while allowing them to pursue larger opportunities. As Christine noted, it's hard not to grasp everything that's in front of them, because it's right there in front of you for the taking. But NBISIING must think strategically about what they can take on as a young, growing business and what they want to think about in the future.
I've known Rob about 20 years and have only known Christine about 4 years, but I know who she was when she was at Hydro One. What strikes me most is their calmness and modesty in all of this. They are focused and driven. Their exuberance comes out with their achievements and their wins. I feel their ability to collaborate drives the support for Indigenous business and support of the community. Their presence in the supply chain in Ontario and Canada are being felt and are great examples of economic development. This is a very good commercial business, but also a shining light of what is meant by meaningful and respectful at work. So the key takeaways from our discussion are: diversity breeds innovation. Indigenous business contributes to the perspectives we strive for in business in doing it better, differently, efficiently, and embracing innovation. Indigenous communities have been building economies for hundreds of years and are ready to work in a meaningful way. Today, Indigenous businesses and communities lead with their values and foundations of trust, respect, and commitment. NBISIING Power also believes in sharing knowledge and benefits with others to support capacity building across the nations. I want to close this call to action with a question. Knowing what you've heard listening to this episode of Powerful Connections, as well as listening to the recap Rainey and myself just highlighted, what action are you taking to support Indigenous business development and Indigenous economic growth? Look forward to hearing from you after you listen to each episode. I encourage you to subscribe to Powerful Connections wherever you get your podcasts. Share the podcast with those you feel will find it interesting and useful. Connect with me on my website at dgg5advising.com or find me on LinkedIn at Dean G. Gation.